I will call Shell, Royal Dutch Shell, has been doing business in Nigeria for like 60 or 70 years, and it's been financially extremely lucrative for them and their primary stakeholders, obviously. Most of the oil in Africa comes from the Niger Delta, which is where the area that we'll be discussing and analyzing in our case. Shell has capitalized on these resources and has seen very lucrative returns as a result. But in doing business in Nigeria, as we've discussed quite a bit today, it has come with a lot of challenges, dealing with what for a long time was a kind of quasi-military government. And in 2005, a lot of international human rights groups and environmental groups became very vocal and accused Shell of being the villain of the Nigerian environment and really failing to support the Nigerian people and shortchanging them as a result of their operations there. And this was a shock to Shell because they've always prided themselves on being corporate, having a lot of corporate responsibility and very sound operating principles. So they were shocked to have these accusations against them. The right versus right question that we will be considering in analyzing our case is, can Shell operate in this environment, in this climate, and continue to reap these financial benefits, or do they need to remove themselves from it where someone else will move right in, change will not likely happen, and if they stay, can they be more successful in the future in dealing with the people of Nigeria and the government, which is difficult to deal with?
I'll be covering the ethical method we're using, specifically, to quote Badaracco in his book in 1998, he states that Aristotle is important because balance represents a deep moral idea in a world of inescapable conflicts. The right versus right is the inescapable conflict. In other words, do we operate profitably, operate in an area where we've got work with a questionable government? Much like Bob pointed out, it's industry specific. Unfortunately, for most of the world where they have hydrocarbons, most of the governments have spotty human rights records at best. So it's kind of a fact of doing business. In that regard, we've decided to go ahead and use the Aristotelian or teleological method to do our analysis, which is to say, within the framework of process that's available to them, how can they act ethically? One of the reasons we looked at this as opposed to the deontological perspective, to quote Stuart Hampshire from his lectures in Harvard, using Kant's method is basically self-defeating to discuss principles in terms of psychological terms, that is, the parts of the soul, powers of the mind, useless because it's inconclusive. It leads people to invent a philosophy of mind which is designed to support their thesis about justice, and consequently the argument goes around and around in a circle. There's no actual practical solution achieved. By using the Aristotelian method, we'll probably get some compromise. It will be messy, but we can at least identify the problem and try to form solutions within that process. We haven't actually come down to the point of solutions yet. This is a little bit different than Unicom and Burma because Nigeria is not, they've transitioned from a military government to a civilian elected one. They've had several successful civilian transfers of power. So the ethical issue is more to operating in a corrupt, unethically not transparent business climate, and how do you do that and maintain your brand, operating in the developed world.
1 minute.
We're looking at 3 focal points where we're going to try and figure out the morally imaginative or ethically imaginative solution. The first focal point is looking at it from the expectations and standards which Shell holds itself in terms of their internal ethical processes and how that competes and contrasts with the business practices of the Nigerian government and how accountability will be defined and upheld. 2, looking internally at Roy Dutch Shell and identifying the levels of leadership and management that have maybe failing to uphold their internal ethical standards. And 3, analyzing the business environment as a whole and how other companies operate within Shell, which is to say, what's everybody else doing and what's the actual ethical, social norm for the oil industry within that part of the world. So what we're looking back here for feedback is y'all's suggestions as far as right, wrong in terms of the benefits of staying engaged, bias divestment, because we're quite frankly haven't made up our mind as a group yet. We've got competing opinions. And with that, that's all I've got.
Okay, so
Questions?
you ready for discussion now?
Yeah,
We
please.
are.
Any thoughts?